My expectation is to be one of the best players in the world one day. I wouldn't expect anything less than that.
The footage they didn't want you to see, it's out now. Caitlin Clark hit the floor. No whistle, no call, no explanation, just silence from the people who were supposed to protect her. But here's what nobody told you: that referee, gone, fired. And the new footage showing exactly what happened to Caitlin Clark is already breaking the internet.
It has got all the buzz. If you are on X, if you're on Instagram, TikTok for the young kids.
This wasn't bad officiating. This was a decision. Someone chose to look away. Someone let it happen. And now, for the first time, we know who and why. The league tried to bury this story. They couldn't. Stay with us, because what comes next will change everything you thought you knew. The night everything broke. Before the injury, before the firing,
Caitlin Clark did not miss a step after being sidelined for 5 games with a quad injury.
Drove to the basket. Contact, hard contact. The kind that sends a player stumbling sideways, arms out, trying to catch herself before she hits the floor. No whistle. Clark looked at the referee. He looked back. Then he turned and walked to the other end of the court like nothing happened. Like she wasn't standing there. Like millions of people weren't watching. That one moment got recorded by someone in the stands. Not a journalist, not a TV crew, just a fan with a phone who happened to have the right angle at the right time. It got posted online, and within 24 hours, it had been seen by millions of people who couldn't believe what they were watching. Comments flooded in from every direction. NBA fans, sports analysts,
fans were truly treated to what was a real nail-biter toward the end.
People who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives, all saying the same thing. That wasn't a missed call. That was a choice. But here's what made this specific footage different from all the other clips fans had already been sharing for weeks. This one had a clear angle. You could see the referee's eyes. You could see the contact. You could see the exact moment the decision got made in real time, and it wasn't confusion. It wasn't a bad angle. It wasn't a referee who simply didn't see it. He saw it. He decided, and he walked away. Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White
has been named the head coach of the Indiana Fever.
Had already been complaining about officiating before this clip even surfaced. After one game, she said plainly, "I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games." That was 4 games into the season. 4 games. The season had barely started, and the head coach was already standing at a podium telling reporters something was wrong. But the league stayed quiet. Players were frustrated. Coaches were frustrated. Fans were posting clips every single night, tagging journalists, tagging the league's official accounts, building threads that documented every missed call, every no call, every moment Clark hit the floor without a whistle. The WNBA's response to all of it was essentially, this is just how the game is played. New fans don't understand the physicality. Give it time. That explanation didn't age well. Because the physicality argument only works if the physicality goes both ways. If every player in the league is playing through the same contact, dealing with the same standard. But Clark wasn't getting the same standard. She was getting hit harder and protected less, and anyone watching the games could see it clearly. Game after game, she logged 3, 5+ minutes. She took the contact, kept her head down, and competed. That's who she is. She had played 185 consecutive games between Iowa and Indiana without missing one. That kind of player doesn't complain. She just keeps going. But a body has limits.
To lead, Clark through traffic, finds a falter, she hits.
What came next wasn't just a bad call. It was a left quad strain that pulled Caitlin Clark off the court for a minimum of 2 weeks. The WNBA's biggest, draw the player driving ticket sales, television ratings, and merchandise revenue across the entire league, was sitting in street clothes on the bench, and everyone had watched it happen. Slowly, publicly, game after game, while the officials looked the other way. The footage didn't create the problem. It just made it impossible to keep pretending the problem wasn't there. The ref who disappeared. Here's where the story gets strange. After the injury footage spread, one name started coming up in conversations among league insiders, journalists, and fans who had been tracking the officiating situation closely. A referee who had been working Fever games. Someone who had been visible in multiple viral clips standing right there, in frame, while Caitlin Clark got hit and no whistle came. That referee is no longer listed among active WNBA officials. No announcement, no press conference, no explanation from the league. One day he was on game assignments. Then the footage went everywhere. Then he wasn't. The WNBA has a long history of saying nothing about officiating decisions. That's not unique to this situation. Leagues across professional sports rarely explain why a specific referee gets removed. But the timing here is so obvious that even people who don't follow basketball closely noticed it. The clip spread on a Tuesday. By the weekend, that official's name had vanished from the schedule. Fans noticed within hours. Sports journalists started making calls. And the question that kept coming up wasn't just, did he get fired? It was, why did it take a viral video to make anything happen? Because here's what nobody in the league wants to say out loud. This referee wasn't operating in a vacuum. He wasn't some rogue official making up his own rules in the middle of a game. He was working inside a system that told him, directly or indirectly, what to call and what to let go. And for weeks, that system was working exactly as it had been set up to work until the cameras made it undeniable. Removing one official doesn't fix the system. It just gives the league something to point to when reporters ask what action was taken. Now here's the part that makes this whole thing even harder to defend. According to multiple people who have spoken publicly about WNBA officiating,
I don't think it's as deep as people make it, but yeah, I mean, obviously it's there. You always have a rivalry.
some of the league's referees came directly from high school officiating jobs. Not NCAA Division I, not the NBA G League, not even a mid-level professional development program. High school. These officials were placed into the highest stakes, most watched games this league had ever hosted. Games where millions of brand new viewers were tuning in specifically because of one player, and they were being asked to manage situations they had never been trained for. The speed is different at this level, the pressure is different, the scrutiny is completely different. And the consequences of a bad call in 2024, with everyone carrying a recording device in their pocket, are nothing like what any of them had experienced before. That is a structural failure, a serious one. And it didn't happen by accident. Someone made the hiring decisions. Someone looked at the officiating development budget and decided it wasn't a priority. Someone reviewed the referee roster, saw where these officials were coming from, and signed off anyway. These are not anonymous decisions. They were made by people with titles and salaries inside the WNBA offices. And when the criticism started, when coaches were calling it egregious at press conferences, when players were confronting officials on national television, when fans were building documented threads of missed calls that stretched back weeks, someone inside that building looked at all of it and decided the right response was silence. That decision made everything worse, because silence, in this case, wasn't neutral. It was permission. It didn't pass. It got louder. And the ref who disappeared is just the first domino. The hidden committee. This is the part of the story that most casual fans don't know about. And once you hear it, a lot of things start making sense. The WNBA's officiating isn't just managed by a referee supervisor watching games from a control room somewhere. There is a committee made up of coaches, general managers, and league stakeholders that has direct input into how games are called, not just general guidelines. Specific direction, how physical a game is allowed to be, what kind of contact gets a whistle and what kind doesn't, what style of basketball the league wants its officials to permit on the floor. Read that again slowly. The people deciding how referees call games are the same people who coach teams and run front offices, the same people whose jobs depend on wins and losses, the same people whose entire defensive systems are built around aggressive, physical play that would draw whistles if officials were calling it straight. These are not neutral observers. These are not impartial administrators with no stake in the outcome. These are competitors, and they have been sitting at a table behind closed doors, shaping the rules that affect every single game, including the games their own teams play in. One analyst who covers the WNBA regularly said it plainly in a public interview. There is a stakeholder group telling officials what style of basketball they want.
The Bucks are used to throwing parties here in Deer District. I mean, who could forget the 2021 championship run?
And referees are following that direction. That's not a rumor. That's not a fan theory posted at midnight. That came from someone with direct knowledge of how the league operates. Now put Caitlin Clark in the middle of that structure. Her game doesn't fit the mold this committee built. She plays fast, genuinely fast, college fast. She spaces the floor in a way that forces defenses to completely reorganize. She draws so much attention from defenders that her teammates get open looks they would never get otherwise. Her entire offensive game is built on skill, movement, and the threat of the three-pointer. The committee's preferred style is the opposite. Slower pace, more physical defense, hand-checking that would get called immediately in the NBA. Body contact on cutters and ball handlers that clears out driving lanes by making them feel like construction zones. Clark's game was never going to thrive in that environment. Not because she can't compete physically, she can, and she did, for weeks, through contact that no other star in the league was absorbing without protection. But because the system was calibrated against exactly the kind of player she is. And here's the part that nobody in the league's front offices wants discussed publicly. When Clark started selling out arenas and breaking television records, the committee didn't respond by updating the system to protect its most valuable new asset. The attention she brought made the league's previous mediocrity visible by comparison. Suddenly, people were asking why attendance had been low for years, why ratings had been declining, why women's basketball, with all its talent, hadn't broken through the way it should have. Clark's success didn't just threaten opponents on the court, it threatened reputations off it. It made certain people look like they had been doing their jobs poorly for a long time, and people who feel threatened by someone's success rarely go out of their way to protect them. So what happened to Caitlin Clark on that court? The missed calls, the unchecked contact, the referees who turned their backs, none of it was random. It was a system doing exactly what it had been designed to do. The only thing that changed was that the cameras caught it, what the numbers actually say. Set aside the emotions for a moment. Set aside the viral clips and the angry comments in the TV segments. Just look at the numbers. In the 2024 WNBA season,
Fever fans, listen up though, because every single one of the team's 44 games will be broadcast on national TV this season.
Caitlin Clark was responsible for approximately 26% of all WNBA economic activity. That figure includes merchandise sales, ticket revenue, and television deals. One player, roughly 1/4 of the entire league's financial output, not 1/4 of her team's revenue, 1/4 of the entire league's. To understand how unusual that number is, think about the NBA for a second. LeBron James, at the absolute peak of his cultural influence, never came close to driving 26% of NBA revenue by himself. The NBA has too many markets, too many stars, too many revenue streams for any single player to move the needle that dramatically. The WNBA is a smaller league, but that number still tells you something important. It tells you that before Clark arrived, the foundation was fragile. One player shouldn't be able to account for 1/4 of a professional league's entire economy. That's not a compliment to Clark. That's a warning sign about everything that came before her. Attendance at Indiana Fever road games told the same story in real time. Teams that had been playing in half-empty arenas for years were suddenly posting sellouts. Season ticket sales across the league jumped. Cities that had never shown much interest in their local WNBA franchise were suddenly paying attention because Clark was coming to town. Road game, opponents building, still packed. Television ratings followed the same pattern. Games featuring Clark were drawing numbers the league hadn't seen in decades.
And then a little handoff action getting to the mid-range, as I said, after an offensive rebound.
Broadcasters who had been airing WNBA games to modest audiences were suddenly in a completely different conversation about advertising rates and viewership projections. Corporate sponsors noticed. Media companies noticed. The mainstream sports conversation, which had largely treated the WNBA as a footnote for years, began to treat it as an actual priority. The league had spent years trying to manufacture this kind of moment. Marketing campaigns, rule changes, scheduling adjustments, none of it had moved the needle the way one from Clarksville, Indiana moved it simply by being herself and playing basketball. She gave the WNBA everything it had been asking for. And in return, the league put her in a system where she absorbed physical punishment on nearly every possession, with no protection from the officials who were supposed to enforce the rules equally. She logged 3, 5+ minutes a night and never complained publicly. She had played 185 consecutive games.
Martin looking. Here's Clark. She fires, and it goes!
139 of them at Iowa, without missing one, because she is the kind of athlete who competes through discomfort and finds a way. That streak wasn't luck. It was discipline, preparation, and a body that had been carefully maintained over years of professional habits. But a quad doesn't care about discipline. It cares about load. And the load Clark was carrying, the minutes, the contact, the physical punishment that went unaddressed week after week, eventually had one outcome. The league had every financial reason to protect her. The numbers made that case more clearly than any argument a coach or fan could have made. 26%. That's not a star player. That's a lifeline. They had the data. They had the evidence. They had the coach telling them at press conferences that something was wrong. They did nothing until the injury report said it for them. The silence that said everything. When Caitlin Clark's injury was announced, the Indiana Fever released a statement. The league acknowledged it on the injury report. That was it. No statement about the officiating.
She's only played 13 of 29 games. She's been in and out of the lineup, obviously, with the injuries.
No acknowledgement of the pattern that fans, coaches, and analysts had been documenting for weeks. No explanation of what steps were being taken to prevent the same thing from happening to other players. Just a name on a list and a recovery timeline. The silence was its own message. Because when the WNBA wants to make noise, it knows how. When there's a positive story to tell, a record attendance figure, a big television deal, a milestone moment, the league's communications machine runs at full speed. Press releases, social media campaigns, the whole operation. But when Caitlin Clark was being knocked to the floor, game after game, silence. When Coach Stephanie White called the officiating egregious in a post-game press conference, silence. When Brittany Griner, one of the most respected players in the league, stopped a live halftime interview to go confront the referees on national television, the WNBA issued no statement. That's not an oversight, that's a choice. And the people watching made their own choice in response. They started asking harder questions. Journalists who hadn't been covering the WNBA closely started paying attention. Legal conversations that had previously been happening privately started moving into public view. The word lawsuit started appearing in articles. Clark's fans aren't a casual fan base. They followed her from college to the pros. They watch every game, they post every clip. They know the rules better than some of the people working in the league offices. And when those fans feel like something wrong is happening and the institution responsible isn't addressing it, they don't go away quietly.
Iowa's Caitlin Clark has become a national phenom, and some fans say they went the extra mile just to watch her play here.
The silence didn't make the story smaller. It made it bigger. Every day the league said nothing. The story grew. Every missed press conference where a reporter asked about officiating and got a non-answer, more people started paying attention. Some problems get smaller when you ignore them. This one got larger. And the footage that eventually surfaced showing clearly what had been happening on that court is the reason a referee no longer works in this league. The silence had a cost. It always does. A referee is gone. The footage is still spreading, and the WNBA is sitting with a question it can't answer quietly anymore. Caitlin Clark didn't come into this league asking for special treatment. She came in and immediately became the reason millions of people started watching. She filled buildings that had been half empty for years. She put this league on television in a way it hadn't been in a very long time. And the system responded by leaving her unprotected until the cameras made it undeniable. The referee got fired, but the committee is still there. The structure is still there. The same people making the same decisions are still there. One firing isn't reform, it's damage control. If you've been watching this unfold, subscribe and hit the notification bell. This story is far from over.